Picture this. It's 1943. World War II is raging. North Africa is a battlefield. The Allies are planning an invasion, a massive operation that will change the war's trajectory. But there's one problem. If the Germans find out the real target, thousands of soldiers will die. So the British did something extraordinary, something that seems impossible in hindsight. They took a dead body, a corpse, and they turned it into a weapon. They planted false documents on the body, military plans, strategic papers, all designed to lie. Then they put the corpse in the ocean and let the Germans find it. This wasn't science fiction, it wasn't fantasy, it was real, and it changed the entire course of the war. This is the story of Operation Mincemeat, the deception that fooled Hitler. A mission so audacious, so counterintuitive that even the people executing it weren't sure it would work. A plan that required believing the Germans would be fooled by documents on a dead man. But they did believe, and thousands of soldiers lived because of it. How did British intelligence convince their enemies that false documents were real? How did they create a deception so perfect that it changed military history? And why did this incredible story almost disappear from history?
Let's set the stage for what was happening in 1943. The Allies had won North Africa, Egypt, Libya. They defeated the Germans there. But the real war was just beginning. They needed to invade Europe, to take the fight to Hitler's doorstep. According to declassified military records from the National Archives, the Allies planned their next major operation, the invasion of Sicily. Sicily was the gateway to Europe. Control it and you control the Mediterranean. Control the Mediterranean and you threaten mainland Europe. But Sicily was heavily defended. German forces, Italian forces, fortifications, guns. If the Germans knew the Allies were invading Sicily, they would reinforce it. They would prepare defenses. They would slaughter the invasion force. According to documented military analysis and declassified strategic assessments, the success of the invasion depended on one thing: surprise. The Allies needed to deceive the Germans about where the invasion would happen. They needed to make the Germans believe the invasion was coming somewhere else, somewhere that would keep German forces away from Sicily. And that's when British intelligence had their idea. According to declassified MI-RAC and Naval Intelligence Division records, someone suggested something radical. What if they planted false military documents showing the invasion was aimed at Greece, at Sardinia? What if they made the Germans believe the Sicilian operation was a feint? But how do you get those documents to the Germans? How do you make sure they find them? How do you make sure they believe them? That's when the plan became truly audacious. According to documented accounts and declassified military records, British intelligence proposed using a corpse. They would find a dead body, or get one, they would dress it as a British officer, plant military documents on it, put it in the ocean off the coast where the Germans would find it. A dead man carrying secrets, a corpse as a messenger. According to declassified British intelligence records, most people thought the idea was insane, a deception so bizarre that it couldn't possibly work. But one man believed in it. According to documented historical accounts and declassified records, his name was Flight Lieutenant Charles Cholmondeley, an officer in Naval Intelligence Division. Cholmondeley and his team designed the deception. Every detail, every element, everything had to be perfect. According to declassified military documents, they would need a corpse, a body that hadn't been dead too long, a body that was complete and intact, because the Germans would examine it, they would autopsy it, they would look for signs of deception. According to documented accounts, they found what they needed at St. Mungo's Hospital in Glasgow, a man who had died of pneumonia, a corpse that met their criteria.
Let's understand the mind behind this deception. Charles Cholmondeley wasn't a typical military officer. He was creative, imaginative, the kind of person who could think in ways that others couldn't. According to declassified biographical records and military documentation, Cholmondeley worked in Naval Intelligence Division. His job was to think like the enemy, to imagine what Germans would believe. He understood something crucial about deception. You don't fool someone by lying badly. You fool them by telling a lie that's partially true, a lie that fits with what they already believe. The Germans expected the Allies to invade Europe. That was truth. The Germans expected military operations to be well planned and documented. That was truth. So Cholmondeley's lie would be about the location, not the fact that an invasion was coming. According to declassified records, Cholmondeley and his team created fake military documents, letters, battle plans, strategic assessments, all pointing to Greece as the invasion target. They used real British military letterhead, real signatures, real military procedures. Everything had to be authentic enough to withstand German scrutiny. According to documented military records and declassified intelligence assessments, the documents were designed to look like they'd been carried by a senior officer, someone important enough that the Germans would be interested, someone important enough that the documents would be taken seriously. They crafted a backstory for the corps, a name, a rank, a unit, a history. Everything had to be consistent. According to declassified records, the corps was given the identity of Major William Martin, Royal Marines, a fictional officer with a fictional history. But Major Martin needed to be real enough to survive German investigation. They even created personal letters, love letters from a girlfriend, letters from his family. These letters would tell the story of who Major Martin was, what he cared about, what made him human. Because the Germans wouldn't just look at the military documents, they would look for signs that this was a real person, a real officer carrying real papers. According to documented accounts and declassified intelligence assessments, the deception was extraordinarily detailed, more detailed than most people would think necessary. They included hotel receipts, personal effects, items that would confirm the false identity, everything designed to make Major Martin seem real. And then they put the corpse in a special container and they dropped it in the Mediterranean Sea. They chose the location carefully. According to declassified military records, they selected a point off the Spanish coast where currents would carry the body to shore in a location where Spanish authorities would find it. Spain was officially neutral, but secretly sympathetic to the Germans. Spanish authorities would examine it. They would inform the Germans.
According to declassified Spanish government records and Allied intelligence documentation, the body washed ashore on April 30th, 1943. A Spanish fisherman found it. He reported it to authorities. The Spanish military took possession of the corpse. Now came the critical moment. Would the Spanish open the documents? Would they read them? Or would they simply return them to the British without examining them? According to declassified records and documented historical accounts, Spanish authorities opened the documents. They examined them, and then they made copies. They photographed the military plans. They copied the letters, and then they sent copies to the Germans. The Germans received documents that appeared to be captured British military plans, documents showing invasion strategy. But here's where the brilliance of Cholmondeley's plan becomes apparent. According to declassified German military records and post-war analysis, the German High Command faced a dilemma. The documents said the invasion would target Greece and Sardinia, but German intelligence already suspected the Allies might invade Sicily. So which intelligence was correct? According to documented military analysis and declassified strategic assessments, the documents from the corps had one crucial advantage. They appeared to be genuine captured plans. They weren't reports from spies or guesses from analysis. They were actual British military documents, actual British strategy. At least, that's what the Germans believed. According to declassified German military records and post-war analysis of German decision-making, Hitler was influenced by the documents. German reinforcements were diverted away from Sicily, to Greece, to Sardinia. German commanders began preparing defenses for invasions that would never happen. According to documented military analysis and declassified strategic assessments, the German High Command was fooled, completely fooled, by documents on a dead man. But the British didn't know if the deception had worked. They had to wait. They had to prepare for the invasion while not knowing if German forces would be ready to defend Sicily or if they'd been deceived. According to declassified records, the tension was extraordinary. The entire invasion operation depended on this gamble. Then, in early July 1943, the invasion began. The Allies attacked Sicily, and according to declassified military records and historical documentation, the German response was confused. German reinforcements weren't where they should have been. German commanders weren't prepared for the invasion at Sicily. The deception had worked. According to documented military analysis and post-war German assessments, the German High Command had been so convinced by the false documents that they were caught unprepared. The invasion succeeded. The Allies took Sicily, and according to documented military estimates, thousands of Allied soldiers lived because the Germans had been deceived. According to declassified casualty assessments and military analysis, if the Germans had been prepared, if they had concentrated their forces to defend Sicily properly, Allied losses would have been catastrophic. But because of Operation Mincemeat, because of a corpse carrying false documents, thousands of soldiers came home. Thousands survived who might have died.
But the impact of Operation Mincemeat didn't end with Sicily. According to declassified military analysis and strategic assessments, the success of the deception showed something crucial about modern warfare: information warfare, psychological warfare, deception. These could be as important as weapons and tactics. According to documented military records and post-war analysis, Operation Mincemeat influenced how the Allies approached future deceptions. It showed that the Germans could be fooled, that careful planning and attention to detail could create deceptions so perfect that even the most sophisticated intelligence services would believe them. According to declassified British military records, the success led to more elaborate deception operations before D-Day. According to documented military analysis, British intelligence created entire fictional armies, fake radio transmissions, false preparations, all designed to convince the Germans that the invasion of France would come at Pas-de-Calais instead of Normandy. And these deceptions, informed by the lessons of Operation Mincemeat, contributed to the success of D-Day itself. According to declassified post-war analysis, the Allies saved hundreds of thousands of lives through strategic deception, through psychological warfare, through understanding how to manipulate what people believe. And it all traced back to Operation Mincemeat, the deception that worked because it was so audacious that even the Germans couldn't imagine it. According to historical documentation and declassified records, most people didn't know about Operation Mincemeat for decades after the war. The operation was classified, kept secret, so secret that even some military historians didn't know it had happened. According to documented accounts and declassified records, the British kept Operation Mincemeat classified because they feared it might compromise future deceptions if it became public. They feared that if the Germans knew they'd been fooled, if they understood how the deception worked, it might make them suspicious of other operations. So the story was buried, hidden from public knowledge, a secret weapon that had to remain secret to maintain its power. According to declassified records in historical documentation, it wasn't until the 1950s that the full story of Operation Mincemeat began to emerge, and when it did, people couldn't believe it. A dead man carrying fake documents, fooling the Germans, changing the course of the war. According to documented accounts and military analysis, Operation Mincemeat has become one of the most studied deception operations in military history. It's taught in military academies, it's analyzed by strategists, it's celebrated as a triumph of ingenuity and psychological understanding. According to historical research and documented assessment, Operation Mincemeat saved thousands of lives, not through weapons or tactics, but through deception,
through psychology, through understanding how to manipulate what people believe. But here's what's remarkable about this story. Most people have never heard of it. Operation Mincemeat isn't taught in schools. It's not celebrated like other military victories. Because it was a deception, a trick, a manipulation. And somehow, we celebrate battles and courage, but we forget the strategic brilliance that saved more lives than any single battle could. According to historical analysis and military assessment, this is one of history's great forgotten stories. Charles Chumildy and his team created something extraordinary, a deception so perfect, so detailed, so psychologically sophisticated that it changed the course of the war. They took a dead man and made him a weapon. They turned a corpse into a messenger. They used death to save lives. According to documented accounts and declassified records, Chumildy was never celebrated as a military hero. He wasn't decorated with honors. He wasn't celebrated in parades or newspapers. His contribution was so secret, so classified, that most people never knew he existed. Most people never knew what he accomplished. According to historical documentation, that's the nature of strategic deception. It works best when nobody knows it happened, when the enemy doesn't realize they've been fooled. So Operation Mincemeat was forgotten, hidden, relegated to historical archives, a story that almost disappeared from history. But it shouldn't be forgotten, because Operation Mincemeat teaches us something crucial about warfare, about strategy, about how sometimes the greatest victories come not from weapons or soldiers, but from understanding how human minds work. According to declassified military analysis and historical assessment, Operation Mincemeat was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. It succeeded because Chumildy understood his enemy. He understood how German military officers would think, what they would believe, what would convince them, and he exploited those understandings ruthlessly, brilliantly, successfully. This is what true military genius looks like, not just weapons and tactics, but understanding people, understanding psychology, understanding how to manipulate perceptions. According to historical records and documented analysis, Operation Mincemeat remains one of the most successful deception operations in military history, bar none. It succeeded where it could have failed. It saved lives that would have been lost. It changed the course of the war, and it did it through nothing but ingenuity, psychology, and a corpse carrying false documents. So what does Operation Mincemeat tell us today? What can we learn from a deception so perfect that it changed military history? First, that intelligence and strategy can be as powerful as weapons. Second, that understanding your enemy's psychology is crucial to defeating them. Third, that sometimes unconventional thinking saves more lives than conventional tactics. Operation Mincemeat deserves to be remembered, not because it was about death or deception, but because it was about saving lives through ingenuity. According to historical assessment and declassified analysis, thousands of Allied soldiers came home because of what Chumildy and his team did. Thousands of people lived. Thousands of families weren't destroyed. That's the real legacy of Operation Mincemeat. Not deception for its own sake, but deception in service of saving lives. If this story moved you, if Operation Mincemeat captured your imagination, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more forgotten WW2 stories, more tales of ingenuity and courage, more stories of how unconventional thinking changed the war. Comment below, did you know about Operation Mincemeat? What's the most fascinating deception from history you've heard? Share your thoughts. Next week, we're covering the pilot who flew an entire mission with a shattered cockpit canopy and frozen fingers at 30,000 feet. This survival story will astound you. Thank you for watching. Keep remembering Operation Mincemeat. Keep honoring the deceptions that saved lives.